Hi, this is Brad Linder with Liliputing, and this is the HP Pavilion dm1z laptop. It's an 11.6-inch model with a 1366 by 768 pixel display, but what really makes it special is it's one of the first models on the market to have an AMD E350 processor and AMD Radeon HD 6310 graphics. And what that means is basically, even though it has a starting price of about $450, it's a pretty powerful machine. I mean, it's not super powerful. It's not going to replace your, hot bleeding edge gaming desktop machine, but it is going to give you enough power to do a lot of things that might be difficult to do on, say, a netbook with an Intel Atom processor for not much more money. So first, let's just take a little look at the physical design here. Closed, it looks pretty nice. It's got sort of this, angled, thicker in the back, goes towards the front here. We've got power, a lock, a fan vent. We've got a couple of status LEDs here for power and activity. HDMI, USB. The front, you can see the Dolby speakers. We've got two more USBs for a total of 3. VGA, SD card slot, a combination mic and headphone jack. I personally prefer to have separate jacks, but there's room for 2 jacks. I'm not really sure why they did that. And then over here, where I'm having trouble opening it, is an Ethernet port. There we go. The bottom is sort of interesting. It's one large panel here, and there's no screws. So at first you might think that means that you can't remove the back to access what's inside, but that's actually not true at all, because you can sort of pry up this panel and take the whole thing off and get a look at what's on the inside. We've got an empty PCIe slot here. We've got 2 memory slots. This particular model has, I believe, 3 gigabytes of RAM, so we've got 1 gigabyte here and 2 gigabytes here, I think, and a 2.5-inch hard drive bay. So overall, it's actually very easy to upgrade the hard drive, memory, or other components. Just snap that back in. And you try to make sure that the piece of cat hair isn't in it. Okay, and the whole thing's closed up. The battery is a 55 watt-hour battery. Now, the thing about the AMD processor, AMD hasn't been really known for low-power devices with good battery life. This particular model has their newer low-power processor. It's about 18 watts that it runs at. And overall, it's not too bad. It gets about 5 to 5.5 hours of runtime in my tests. There are a lot of other machines out there that are going to give you even more time than that, but I find that 5 to 5.5 hours is enough to get a lot of work done. So I'm pretty impressed with that. And in terms of overall performance, you've got, it's not quite as fast as some of the older Intel CULV-based systems that I've tried for processor speed. So things like transcoding video or compressing zip files. It's much faster than an Intel Atom chip, but not quite as fast as something like a Intel SU7300 Core 2 Duo chip. Definitely nowhere near the Core i3 and other new processors. So it's not quite that powerful on that end. Graphics, on the other hand, HP actually sent me an optional Blu-ray USB disk drive to test out, and it has no problem playing 1080p Blu-ray discs and cranking out that video to an external display. It also gets decent, not spectacular, but decent scores in graphics benchmarks, holds its own against NVIDIA Ion-based systems, for instance. So the graphics, without necessarily using up a lot of power, are pretty good. Take a look at the keyboard here. Overall, I like the keyboard a lot. Nice chiclet-style, full-size keyboard, very easy to type on. Over here, where a lot of companies with smaller keyboards decide that they're going to try to cram 6 buttons in here. We just got 4. Again, it'd be kind of nice if the up and down arrows were a little bit larger, but it's not that hard to find what you're looking for here. The touchpad is kind of the Achilles heel of this whole thing. The touchpad is one large piece, which has a nice texture to it and actually feels pretty good, but in order to click, you need to press down on the touchpad itself because there aren't separate buttons here. So you can press for left, press for right, etc. I'm not entirely sure what I just did there. It does support multi-touch gestures. The problem is, the way it's laid out, your hand will fairly frequently, as you're typing, bump up against the touchpad, and that makes the cursor jump around. It makes it, you might accidentally delete text. It does all sorts of pretty awful things. Fortunately, you can disable the touchpad. You just double tap it, and you see that light goes on, and now the touchpad isn't working at all. So if you plug in a USB mouse, that really kind of solves the problem, unless you don't want to carry a USB mouse around, or if you want to use this on your lap or someplace where it's going to be awkward to use a mouse. So, take a quick look here. It runs Windows 7 Home Premium 64-bit, has wireless 802.11bgn and Bluetooth. This particular model has, I think I said 3 gigs of RAM and 320 gigabyte hard drive. And, overall, aside from the touchpad, it's a great little machine. It's not the most powerful, but for the price, you're not going to find a lot of machines that have the same sort of capabilities that it does. It has some custom software from HP, including the software that sort of creates groups on your home screen for media and games, internet, and so forth. And the display is nice and large. You shouldn't have any problems fitting most websites, for instance, on it. And the viewing angles are not spectacular, but they're not that bad. Actually, they're pretty good from side to side. Okay, I take it back. The viewing angles are actually pretty good. You can see that the image sort of washes out here when you tip it back, but overall the text is still pretty viewable. It's a glossy display, which means that in bright sunlight like this, you're going to see some glare on the screen. I wouldn't necessarily want to use this laptop outside for an extended period, but overall it gets the job done. And some people really like it when you can fold the screen all the way down like this. I have yet to find a laptop that folds down farther than this one. In fact, I can touch the lid to the desk here. So it's a pretty versatile machine. So there you go. Again, this is the HP Pavilion dm1z laptop with an AMD processor and AMD graphics. Starting price of about $450. This particular configuration is going to cost you a little bit more than that. Battery life, pretty good, not spectacular. Touchpad, pretty awful. Other than that, excellent machine for the price. This is Brad Linder with Liliputing.